All right. All right, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to another edition of West Side Meetup. I'm your co-host here, Gil Coloma. I am an active out-of-state real estate investor, all while working a W-2, growing my passive income to, growing my portfolio to increase my passive income. So just to let you know, I am also an advisor with WNN Properties, where we are active real estate investors who uh, who hold you accountable to achieve your goals, right? So, um, one thing I'd like to go over tonight, prior to us kicking off this presentation, are some housekeeping rules here. So, first, I would like to let everybody know that this meeting will be recorded and posted online if you wanted to watch it again, if you missed something or want to share it with some friends. Second, I'd like to ask everyone to please mute your mics to minimize distractions for our speaker. Third, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat and we'll answer them during the Q&A portion of the presentation. Um, Also, please stick around after the presentation as we will transition out into breakout rooms to do some networking, right? Networking is, where we thrive in the real estate investing world. And I'd like to put out a disclaimer. All the information shared tonight is for information only. And, I'd also like to, invite people to follow us on Facebook at West Side Real Estate Meetup Group. We also would like to have to add you guys onto our email list, right? So please, for those of you that are not on our email list, if you could put your emails in the chat, we'd love to add you onto our list here. And a small fee that we ask is if you find value tonight, please let a friend or family member know about us and our monthly meetup here, and just share what Westside Meetup is about. Okay. All right. And now to my handsome co-host here, Brandon Rabe.
Oh, thank you, Gil. Appreciate that introduction. And just one more thing to piggyback off of what Gil was saying in the chat, we also have a meetup roster. So there's a bunch of people here tonight. Right now we got about 40 people. So you may not be able to meet everybody. So what that meetup roster is just your opportunity to go and share who you are, what you do, and kind of what your strengths are or what need that you have. And after the meetup, we'll collect all that and then go ahead and email everybody who signs up on that roster. So if you don't sign up on that, you won't get connected with whoever else is on there. So make sure you go ahead and do that. Like Gil was saying, my name is Brandon Rabe. I am the other co-host of this meetup alongside our in-person meetup, Real Estate at the Park. And I am an active investor. I'm buying out in Kansas City. And I'm also an advisor with WNN Properties, just like Gil, training people to start their portfolio or add more properties to their portfolio. So tonight, we have a special guest. And this guest, it's really neat. I've gotten to know her, kind of in the early stages of her investing. And it's really neat just to kind of see her where she's at now. She was one of my early accountability partners, actually. And we got to kind of, assist each other in that sense. So I'm not going to go too deep into her bio because I know she's going to share about herself. So without further ado, I just want to bring up Stacey Johnson.
Aloha. Thank you for having me. It's nice to see everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces on here, so I appreciate the love and support from all of you guys. So let me go ahead here and share my screen. And just give me a thumbs up if you see that. Cool. All right, let's jump right into it. So little disclaimer, I am pretty new to house flipping, so take what I say with a grain of salt. I'm doing this from my own experience, but use what you will. I'm also a resource if you'd like. So today we're going to talk about house flipping in Hawaii. Here's what our agenda is going to look like. I'll go a little bit in depth about my story, how I got started. We'll go talk about market stats in the pandemic versus coming out of it. So 2019 versus 2022 and how the market has shifted since then. I'll then talk about how to flip in Hawaii and talk about how social media has really helped my business and how it can also help yours. And lastly, I'll talk about how coming out of this pandemic, it's the same strategy, but we're shifting our numbers, and I'll go in depth on a case study. So if you have any questions, like Gil said, put that in the chat and we'll definitely have some time at the end to go over that. So let's get started. A little bit about myself. I am 26 years old. I'm born and raised in Waipahu. I did not go to Waipahu High School though. I graduated from Pearl City, and my parents are not entrepreneurial at all. They're actually immigrants from the Philippines. So I'm a first generation here. And my background specifically is in construction management and engineering. After high school, I went away to college at UC Irvine and studied mechanical engineering. And in that process, I easily realized that this was not something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so in college, we had to do something called, it was like a senior design project. And my sophomore and junior year, I was experimenting to see what kind of senior design projects that I wanted to do. And I noticed that there was none that fit what I wanted to do. And so my junior year, I started the UC Irvine solar race car team, where we designed and built a race car completely powered by the sun to go across America, 2,500 miles across America. And through that process, I really realized that I love being in charge of a project, but I hate doing the actual work. And so that was like my first into realizing that, okay, if I want to be an engineer and I want to be like a manager, it's probably going to take me 20 years just to get to that engineering manager position. And by then, the max I'd be tapped out at is probably $150,000. For me, that just wasn't enough for me. And the fact that it was going to take 20 years to get there was even more so like not my jam. And so on top of that, I was also doing a research project where I was analyzing California's capacity to meet 100% renewable energy. And that involved me like literally staring at Excel and doing a bunch of data things. Who knew what I was really doing? But in that, I realized staring at a computer, this completely destroys me. And so taking that, that knowledge that I learned about myself, luckily this guy in my solar race car team, he was interning for a general contractor that was building a dorm tower on campus, and he invited me to go intern with them. And that opened my eyes to a brand new realm outside of engineering, and that was construction management. And so straight out of college, I went to go work for these guys, and I was doing pretty big projects. The first one I worked on was $131 million, and all the way up to the Delta terminals at LAX, which was a $1.2 billion project. And so I was on the field every single day, trying to make sure that these guys were installing things per plan, handling all the inspections and whatnot. And so while I was working that job, I was working probably like 70 to 80 hours a week. And when I had calculated my hourly wage, I realized that I was like barely making minimum wage. And to go through 4 years of engineering school and realize that, I was like, dude, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? And also, if I really want to have a family one day, there was no way I was going to be able to sustain this kind of lifestyle. And so I picked up the little book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and realized that the top 1% in the world goes into real estate. And so I needed to figure out how I was going to get into real estate. And so in May of 2019, I was 22 years old and I had saved all my money since I was a little kid. And I bought my first house flip in Huntington Beach. Try to do all the work myself because I wanted to learn and understand residential construction. And luckily, this guy I was telling on the job site, I was telling him about what I was doing. And one day he was like, come show me the project. I want to help you. And he taught me how to do, like, we changed out a P-trap. We did a bunch of stuff. And that was like horrible. If you guys know what a P-trap is, it's that little U pipe at the bottom of your sink. And it's disgusting. So doing all of that, it was great experience, but I knew I was never going to touch any of that stuff ever again. And it gave me a respect for these guys that were working on my projects. I ended up losing $30,000 on that first deal for multiple different reasons. Main thing was I didn't have a coach. I didn't have somebody to walk me through the process. And that's huge for me. And so, I did that project, and because I was working, I was doing one project a year and moving into the next project. I ended up making money, but during that second project, my mom had got sick. And so I was forced to move back home to Hawaii. And when I moved back home to Hawaii, I was still working like 80 hours a week. I was completely burnt out. And long story short, it was so bad to the point where I like completely broke down at work, and my boss forced me to take 2 weeks off. And so I took 2 weeks off, and my first week, I just emptied my brain, went to the beach a lot. And then my second week, I remember like saying this prayer that like, hey, God, if I'm supposed to quit this job, I'm going to work on working my leads this next second week. And if I'm supposed to quit, like, show me a sign. And that week I ended up wholesaling a deal for $1,500. Now, if you know wholesaling, that's like literally nothing, but that was the sign that I needed to quit my job. And so I quit my job. I joined Ryan Pineda's Future Flipper All-Star program. And I ended up partnering with an experienced investor for 6 months after that. So I was forking out money just to live and really like not making any money. I worked for this girl for 6 months. We flipped $1 million houses. I raised money for her. I was managing her projects. And it really gave me the confidence to move back home after that and start my own business. And so really just a little over a year ago in April of 2021, my company, Ka'oi Property Buyers, was born. And 6 months, it took me 6 months to find that first deal. I set up a whole cold calling system, which I'll go into detail on as well. And fell out of escrow like 2 or 3 times before I really got that deal that made sense. And since then, I've closed on 4 flips and 3 wholesales, which totals to almost $2.5 million in real estate just this year. And so I want to go over this because for me, like, I only started last year. So I had entered the real estate market right when things were going crazy, when anybody could literally be a flipper. And so it was a plus for me because I could learn the systems while making money pretty easily in that market. So going over 2019 is when COVID had started. And if you look at, I think it was 2020, actually. 2020 is when COVID had started. And if you look at like the number of sales here in May of 2020 for single family houses was 248, and the median sales price was $797,000. And if you compare that to this year, number of sales was 344. So we went up, but the median sales price is now $1,153,500. That's a crazy amount of money that properties just went up in the last 2 years. So realistically, if you were buying a property at like 80% of its value and you threw it on the market, you were going to make money. And I've done that. I had one deal where I did do that. And then going into just the condos, the number of sales went from 254 in 2020 to 688 in 2022. And what I see from that is just that properties were so expensive that everyone's starting to have to buy condos, because that's like double the amount of sales. And the price went from 400,000 to 516,000. So still a good amount, not as much as single family houses. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got started flipping in Hawaii, and how you can get started really in these 3 simple steps. So number 1 is to pick a budget and a time commitment. So what does that really mean? You need to decide what amount of money that you can spend every single month in marketing dollars. It can be 0 or it can be $50,000, whatever fits you. You're going to have to make that work. And on top of that is a time commitment, right? So when I was working 70 to 80 hours a week for my full-time job, I had joined another coaching program, and he made me carve out and really calendar how much time I was going to spend on real estate investing. And so at that time, I had made a promise to myself that I was going to give 30 hours a week to real estate. And so that was like 100 hours, 110 hours a week just to work. Granted, I was super burnt out. I probably slept like 3 or 4 hours a night, worked 7 days a week. And I don't recommend that at all, but you need to decide what works for you and make a commitment to yourself and stick to it. And so when I had come to Hawaii, my budget was only $1,000, at most like $1,500 a month. And now that I had quit my job, I could make more of a time commitment. And then, so the step number 2 would be to pick a marketing channel, where for me, it was cold calling. So my first like 2 weeks, I tried to cold call by myself, and it was super miserable, and I was never going to do it again. And so I knew I needed to create a system. And so I bought this little 2009 Nissan Versa for $2,700. It was the last of like the money that I had, because I wasn't working I wasn't making money for the last 6 months working for that investor, and I had quit my job. And so I bought this little 2009 Nissan Versa, and I threw it on Turo. That little car made me $1,000 to $1,500 a month in cash flow. And so I used that car to pay for my marketing budget. And so what that really looked like was I had my VA, I had hired her from Facebook groups. I was paying them up front, $3 an hour. And remember, the less you pay them, the more you're going to have to be involved. So if you don't have a high time commitment, then you're going to have to pay someone a little bit more than that. And so I paid my VA about $3 an hour. I had downloaded PropStream, which gave me 10,000 records a month. I skip traced those for 3 cents per record, which again, you get what you pay for. So the data wasn't amazing, but it worked for my budget. And then I had a dialer and a CRM. And so all of that totaled to about $1,000 to $1,500 a month, depending on how much data I had skip traced. And so step number 3, this is literally the most important part, is to stick to it for at least 6 months. And the reason why you want to do this is because you want to give yourself some time to track some KPIs. So what does that mean? A KPI is, I think it's known performance indicator. I can't remember what that K is. I just had a brain fart. If someone wants to chime in the chat, go ahead and say it. But tracking your numbers is like huge. So I remember when I was getting started, I had an accountability coach, and I was like really wanting to give up because I wasn't seeing any progress. And so thankfully I had an accountability coach. Oh, it's key performance indicators. There it is. excuse me. There it is. Anyway, so I had an accountability coach and he would tell me every day, like, don't give up because this is a proven process that works. You just have to stick it out. And after 6 months, you'll be able to see what your numbers are and see if you need to adjust your strategy or if it's working or not. And so some practical numbers that I had to track was my cold caller. I had to make sure that she was making a certain number of dials a day, getting a certain number of leads per day. And then for me, I was doing the follow-up, and really the only number that wouldn't burn me out too bad was doing 10 follow-ups a day. I remember Warren and I were getting started at around the same time, and we would hold each other accountable to like how many follow-up calls that we were going to make. And so I had to stick to that. And I knew that if I wasn't hitting my numbers, how was I really supposed to find a deal? And so, again, take this and figure out what works for you. One thing I will say is any marketing channel will work. It's the one that you stay consistent with and keep working at it. And so moving into running the numbers, I'm not going to go into deep detail about this because I'm sure a lot of you guys already know this. And if you want a 20-minute YouTube video, I do go in depth on this. So shoot me a DM. I'll send you that link. But essentially, when you run the numbers on a flip in any market, I was running them like this. So max allowable offer, which is MAO, equals your after repair value or ARV minus your purchase costs, your resale costs, your holding costs, your rehab, and your profit. And so moving into this new market that we're in, I'm pretty excited about what's to come, because as we move into this recession, there's going to be more opportunities to help homeowners and really find solutions to their problems, because that's what we're in the businesses of, right? And really during COVID, because anybody could do a flip and make money, I used that time to tweak my systems. And now moving out of it, everyone's scared. And now I'm going to start ramping up my marketing because I have a system that works, and I need to ramp up marketing to find these homeowners that really need our help. And so, like I said, I had to, in that previous market, you could buy literally any deal and make money. But now coming out of it, I have a clear criteria of what I'm buying, and I'm going to say no to everything else. And so for me, I need to make at least 10% of ARV to mitigate risk, and at least a 15% ROI. And again, this is like an art, not a science, because if you do have higher rehab costs and a higher hold time, it is more risk. So I do want to be a little bit more conservative on my numbers. For example, if my rehab is like $200,000 and I'm going to hold this property for a year, you bet I'm going to profit more than 10% of the ARV. And hopefully get that. If not, we have that wiggle room just in case the market shifts. And so talking about how I use social media to scale, this last year has been really crazy, honestly. And I honestly owe a lot of that to social media. I've been sharing my story since that first house that I bought, which is this little mobile home right here. And this is the last deal that I just sold. All of my coaches and mentors have been from social media, and it was about being loud about what I was doing. I was loud about what I was doing, and anytime somebody brought me a deal, I gave them a referral fee. And then on top of that, social media has allowed me to build this community of people and be a mentor to newbie investors. And it's helped me scale, because if I'm helping other people with getting started in real estate, when they have a deal on the table, who's the first person they think of? It's me. And so this has helped me really gain a lot of traction in the last year. So I highly recommend, if you're not on social media, definitely get on it. And so I wanted to talk about a case study about the latest deal that I just did in Maili, and talk about how the market has really shifted those numbers and how I was lucky that I kept that in mind when I was buying. And so to briefly go over the numbers, I bought this house for $350,000. And when I had ran the numbers, this was in March. When I had ran the numbers, you could see the comps were clearly at like 610 to 630, but it was March. And so we weren't at 2.5% interest rates anymore. We were now at like 3.5, almost approaching 4. And we knew that everyone was saying that the interest rates are going to keep on going up. So as interest rates go up, especially in Maili and Waianae, these people, their buying power shrinks a lot. And so I wanted to make sure I had that wiggle room on my ARV to make sure I would still come up on top. And so I had estimated anywhere from 550 to a 610 ARV. All the purchase costs were $11,000. I estimated 120 to 180 days to hold this property, and that totaled to 21,000. I spent 60K in rehab. Really 3,000 of that went to my project manager. 7K of that went to a finder's fee for the guy who brought me the deal from social media. This is a clear example of why social media is so powerful. And I ended up spending 38,000 to resell this. And I had budgeted about a 70K worth of profit, again, because I wanted to make sure that if the market shifted, I had some room. And so going into this right here, this is the history of this project. So we listed this in May 30 of 2022. Before I finished this project, I had reached out to a couple agents and I asked them if they had a buyer. And the guy who ended up being my listing agent, he had brought me a buyer at $630,000. So we went into escrow at $630,000 before we had even listed it right here. And right as soon as we go into escrow, the person says, I want to back out because of the interest rates. I want to buy something a little bit more affordable, something I can fix up myself. And so we back out of escrow and we decide to list it. And that's what this price is right here, because we got it into escrow. Now, once we backed out of that first escrow and we listed it like publicly on the market, we listed it at $599,000, and we ended up getting an offer at $620,000. And as soon as I accepted that offer, the buyer again backed out. And they said a lot of it was because of interest rates. They couldn't afford the house anymore. And so we let it sit on the market for like 2 weeks, and we noticed that there just wasn't any movement. And so I spoke to Chance, who also had a listing out there, and he was doing a price drop every week. And so I had decided to do the same thing. And so we price dropped it $5K every single week until we got it under contract again. And during that time, guys, we got offers at $480,000 and $500,000. If I took those offers, I would have broke even on this property. Now, that just goes to show how much these interest rates has affected these buyers, specifically in these affordable markets. And when we had talked to these people, it's not that they were lowballing us. What had happened was that they truthfully couldn't afford to buy the house at that price anymore. And so we waited it out. And thankfully we ended up selling this for $579,000 just 2 weeks ago. And that's the end of my presentation. If you guys want to contact me, that's my contact info. I actually host a 30-day challenge where I help newbies in Hawaii specifically find their first deal. So if you're interested in that, go to the link in my bio and click on partner with me, and I'd be more than happy to take you through that. And yeah, I'm going to look at the chat now and see if there's like any questions on here.
I see that
What-
Robert had a question. He asked, what skip tracing software do you use?
Well, at that time I was using something called kind skip tracing. It wasn't that I wasn't happy with PropStream, it was I couldn't afford it. And again, you get what you pay for. So you can find people on Fiverr for 3 cents, but their data is not very good. How am I financing? So typically I will buy a property with hard money. They'll fund anywhere from 80 to 90%. And then I will raise private money for the rest of that. And I'll raise private money for the down payment, the closing costs, the interest payments that I'll have to pay during the hard money loan. And then also typically I'll raise the rehab as well. So currently I am only flipping, but I do have 5 properties under contract that are self-storage, brand new builds in Iowa. If anyone is interested in that, hit me up. That's my info. I'm looking for partners on that. So right now I'm doing a lot of flipping to build capital. Like when I had started, I was like completely broke. Now I'm finally at a point where I'm making more money and I can start buying some rentals. And so that's where I'm at right now. Would owning many properties affect your buying power? Would owning many properties affect your buying power? Depends on what kind of financing you get. So the way that I'm doing them, no. They don't typically look at that kind of stuff. It's asset-based financing. How do I find my contractors? Typically, there'll be referrals. I actually found the one that I have now that I use on my last project. He had reached out to me on Instagram and it turns out he was actually pretty good. So thankful for that because that doesn't happen all the time. I've had to fire a lot of contractors. So contractors will make or break your deal for sure. Could you explain the asset base? So the financing is based on the asset. So if they think it's a good deal, they're going to lend on it. If it's a bad deal, they're not going to lend on it. That's like the simplest way I could explain it. It's just based on the numbers. What was your biggest struggle on your journey so far? Besides permits, I think when I had first quit my job and I moved back in with my parents, that was a huge like pride struggle that I went through. I had lived away from them for the last like 7 years after high school, and having to swallow my pride to move back into my childhood room and make calls in there was a huge hit to my ego. And then on top of that, if you're Asian and your parents told you to go to college and they paid for it and become an engineer, moving back in and telling them you're going to quit your job to go pursue this risky thing. Every single day, my parents told me, when are you going to get a real job? When are you going to get a real job? So I would say the biggest struggle for me was just like mindset, which is, I think everything can be solved with mindset, really. Is Turo still working decent or getting harder? I've liquidated a lot of my cars. I typically really did Turo as a jumping point to start my real estate career, but I knew it was never going to be a long-term thing. I just needed some income because I was super broke. Who is your main lender? I typically use Civic Financial. If you need an intro, just let me know. Is any advice on how to obtain or push your... Dude, I have no advice on pushing permits. You cry every day and pray for a miracle. Are there any tax strategies you implement or recommend when flipping? I am not a CPA. I don't know anything about that. I have a CPA that will handle that. So I haven't really hit that road yet. I would say one thing that newbies get super wrapped up in is like, oh, I'm going to make all this money. I'm going to get taxed so much. Dude, you don't even have that problem until you make money. The last 2 years, I've made negative dollars. And only this year, I'm going to have, if I do have that problem of making money. So I'll worry about that now. And if I have to take this huge hit this year, so be it. At least next year I'll be more prepared, but I wouldn't get so wrapped into that too much. How do you use social media to get the phone to ring, bring in a deal? So typically social media isn't for sellers. I'm loud about what I do so that when somebody else knows a seller, who's the first person that they think of? Me. That's what social media is for. It's not really to target sellers. It's more so just so people know what you're doing. What was your trigger that lit that fire to jumpstart your REI journey? Definitely realizing when I was working 80 hours a week that this was not sustainable for me. I mean, I'm a woman, so I want to have kids one day. And if I ever wanted to take maternity leave for like the whole year after, there was no way I was going to do that working that job that I had. Do you feel as a female it's been hard to break into flipping? No. I think that's a limiting belief. What I do know for sure, and this is coming from construction, was that contractors will not take you seriously. And that's just the reality of it. But what I've done to mitigate that is I have a project manager, and he could be like a little kid, honestly, like a little high schooler, to go check up on the project every day. But it was the fact that it wasn't like a woman checking up on this project, telling them what to do. Cause I really struggled with that when I was an engineer. Where to the point where I called one of the guys out and told him, I said, hey, look, if I was a guy and I said this same thing that I'm saying right now, you probably wouldn't have an issue with it. But because I'm a woman that's a little bit stronger, you have an issue with it. And he looked at me and he straight up said, you're probably right. So I know that that's been a challenge, but there are definitely ways to overcome that. I think that's it, Brandon.
I got a question for you. So
yeah,
you
what you got?
You mentioned joining Ryan Pineda's All-Star Mastermind or mentorship. So do you recommend people starting out joining a mentorship or a group, or just jumping into it and then, failing forward, learning as you go kind of a thing?
So my take on that is you can't afford not to have a coach, because I took a fat hit on my first deal. And for somebody who doesn't have a well-paying job, that can really put them under and make them never, ever want to get back up again. And so I could have mitigated all of that risk if I had just paid for a mentorship and had somebody walk me along the process. And so that's why when I did quit my job, I had like $25,000 saved up, and Ryan's coaching program was $20K. And I paid for that in cash because I knew that I could not afford not to have it. And if I had that access to that network, then I could figure out with my remaining 5K what I was going to do to find a deal and get that money back.
Yeah, I agree. Either way, right? You're gonna pay somehow. We got maybe time for one more question before we jump into our next segment. And it looks like
I'm gonna let
Alan,
you choose.
Yeah. We got, do you purchase properties requiring major repairs? Structural, termites, foundation?
If the numbers work, I'll do anything. I would
What was that
prefer
60K
easy in
rehab
and
that you
out.
had?
Say that again.
The 60K rehab that you had on that property?
Oh man, that was like purely cosmetic. It was Typically, properties will cost anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 in rehab, depending on the size.
Got it. Okay. And did you see another question in there?
I think that's it.
Um,
Yeah, I would say if you guys are really looking to get into commercial investing, get a coach. This is a great community to join if that's your strategy. And no, they do not pay me to say that.
yes, definitely. All right. Well, guys, that is Stacey Johnson. If you guys have any more questions for her, I know the chat really blew up toward the ending. So if you guys still have more questions, feel free to connect with her. Her Instagram handle was on her background. We'll also throw it in the chat so that you can get connected with her. But don't stick around. We're not done yet. I mean, don't leave. That just kind of ended the presentation with Stacey. We're actually going to jump into something new that we have, and it's our investor spotlight. So, Gilbert and I and WNN Properties, we just want to find more ways to provide value to the community and so forth. And this is something that we thought of to help spread awareness and, share with you folks of other investors, up and coming investors, and even advisors within WNN Properties. So for the next couple of minutes, before we get into our open networking and into the breakout rooms and so forth, I just wanted to kind of give the spotlight over to one of the WNN Properties advisors. You may have seen him around. He goes to a bunch of meetups. He's all over social media. His name is Bleys Wright. So I just wanted to bring up Bleys on for a little bit, kind of share about who he is, what he does, and just some things that he's been working on. So Bleys, welcome to Westside Meetup, man.
Hello, guys. Hopefully you guys can all hear me. Thanks, Stacey. That was awesome. I mean, even though you say you're a beginner, at least you're taking action and you've done stuff. Most people say they're a beginner and they haven't even done anything. And, you've been successful, and that's So keep taking action. And don't let the haters, push them aside. But great job. Let's share my screen real quick. Let's see. Hopefully everybody can see that. Actually, if you guys want to follow me, it's also at Blazing REI Hawaii. That's my LLC. My mission is to serve others in their REI journey. I own over 14 properties. Like Brandon said, I'm actually a WNN advisor. So I do one-on-one mentorship for out-of-state investing, specifically in Kansas City. And I actually got 11 doors in my very first year in real estate investing, mainly rentals. What I like to do, I actually have 3 aspects that I like to do: long-term rentals, short-term rentals, or 4 aspects: fix and flips, which we just started, and ground-up construction. My long-term rentals, I actually have 3 properties that are long-term rental. The first one is actually just a small little single-family home. It's actually rented to a Section 8 tenant, so I'm familiar with that process, specifically in Kansas City. The other home that I have is actually on the bottom right. It's a non-conforming duplex. So I have this home. It has a basement, and I rent out the top and the bottom to increase my ROI, get a better return. And the last home that I have for a long-term rental is right above. I actually rent it out by the room. So we have 5 rooms, and we rent out each one for 6 months plus to long-term tenants, which is an awesome strategy. Again, it's great to earn a little bit more for these homes, and it allows for buying homes in nicer areas. My main strategy now, though, is short-term rentals. I have 4 short-term rentals going right now. It's actually on my link tree. If you guys follow me on IG, like them away, go for it. Like everything on there. I have 4 properties. My first one's on the bottom right. It's actually a huge property, 2,000 square feet or so. Great for, especially during football season in Kansas City. If you didn't know that, it's on the Missouri side. But I have 2 in Kansas City, or in Independence. I have 1 in Kansas City, which is North Kansas City, and I have 1 in Phoenix, Arizona. And I do all short-term rentals for them because they get me a better ROI. It is a high risk but there's also high returns. So watch out for that. If you're ready for that, take that leap. But not everybody is ready to make that step. I'm actually working with another investor in here. We're doing a fix and flip down in Maili. It's a big construction project. I actually work with a general contractor here too. So we're all working together to get this project done. It'll be a beautiful non-conforming triplex down in Maili. So look out for that. I also share updates almost every week on it. I'll share updates on all of my properties on IG. The most exciting I'm about is actually our ground up construction that's going on. We have 2 that's going on in Hilo. Those are more affordable homes, getting out locals, getting out new construction homes to locals. Luckily, we have a team that can actually do that. It's very difficult to do that unless you have a team that can get you a lower price point. I have one property over here that's in a permitting process up in Makakilo. I have one in Waikoloa on the Big Island also. It's going to be a nice little custom home. We took the spec home, we made it a little bit more customized, and it's actually almost done the permitting process. So we should be starting that within the next few weeks. And the last one is actually a luxury build in a place called Kohala. That's I'm the most excited about. It's going to be beautiful. That gives me the most. Out of everything that I'm doing now, it's fun and exciting to do something new, right? Especially do something towards the high end neighborhood, high end home. So it's going to have that zero lot pool. It's going to have that big 3,000 square foot house with higher end finishes. But yes, if you guys have any questions, we're trying to keep it short and sweet. Stacey already gave you guys everything you guys need, especially to get started. Yeah, feel free to follow me at Bleys REI Hawaii. That's my IG handle. I'm on Facebook. I'm also on all those other social media websites. I try my best.
Right on. Thank you, Bleys. I actually do have one question for you since we got a minute or two. And you mentioned in your first year, you were able to get to 11 doors. So could you maybe speak to like brand new guys that are here on the call? What is maybe one trade or one thing that really helped you in that first year to get you from where you started at to getting to 11 doors in that first year?
What I did was took action. I had a one-on-one conversation. Like Stacey said, I found a mentor. I paid that mentor. I got coaching from the mentor for that first year, and it made all the difference for me. Some people will partner up on things. Some people will learn by being more active, but being more active, you take more risk. Just like Stacey said in her story, you can lose money in general contractors. You can lose money in property managers, different realtors who are not as good. So it definitely helps to have those core team members, have someone guiding you through the process. It's a huge benefit, a very huge benefit. I was able to use the BRRRR strategy. So I was able to buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. Amazing strategy, especially if you have good amount of rental incomes. And of course, we focus on that Kansas City, Missouri market because it's a good cash flowing market. Good stuff.
Good stuff. And guys, so Bleys, if you want to connect with him, his Instagram handle is in his name there, Bleys REI Hawaii. So please connect with him if you got any more questions, or if you want to get interested, or if you're interested in whatever he's doing. He has his hands in a lot of different things. So just go ahead and connect with him. Now, as we transition now into the next segment of our meetup, we're going to be going into breakout rooms. But before we do that, I did want to share some soft announcements and just allow Gilbert to get us going here with the breakout rooms. And Gil, just let me know when you are ready to go. Perfect. Okay, I actually got the thumbs up already. Well, really quick then, some upcoming announcements. It was in the chat that Gilbert threw out earlier. We're going to have an in-person event happening on September 17th. It's a Saturday. However, we're going to be having it in Hilo on the Big Island. So if you guys are out on the Big Island, you guys want to come and network with out-of-state investors, or if you know anybody out there, come on down, let them know to come out to the meetup. We're going to be promoting it probably tomorrow, Gilbert, as far as location and time and all that. So get connected with me, Gilbert, Bleys, or any of the other WNN advisors to get more information on that meetup. So just wanted to make that announcement there. And also the meetup roster, I threw it in the chat again. If you guys have a moment, because we're only going to do one breakout room tonight, please fill that out. You can get connected with more people on the call besides the ones that you're going to be in the breakout room with. It's very simple, really short thing. You're not going to get that information unless you participate in it. So if you want to get connected, or you want other people's contacts, you also got to sign up on that roster too. Okay. All right. So now we're going to be going into our networking portion of the call. And Gilbert, I see you
Yes.
unmuted. So
We are ready. So yes, be on the lookout. There will be a social media blast about real estate in the park, which will be in Hilo next month. It's usually held out here in Oahu, but Brandon and I figured we'd try to get the outer islands involved here. So please share. But yes, as we transition, we are about to go. I'm going to start opening up the room. So see you guys in those rooms.